Welcome. You are listening to the Be a Better Being podcast, hosted by Michelle Zellner and Sasha Berscheid. Michelle and Sasha are here to give you information and inspiration to help you live your healthiest, happiest lives. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Greetings. Thank you for tuning into the Be a Better Being podcast. I'm Michelle Zellner, your host. I'm without my lovely side host, Sasha, today, but I have the amazing Susan Witkin on with me today. How are you, my friend?
Good morning, and I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for letting me be part of your Better Beings podcast.
Well, February is Heart Month, so welcome everybody to Heart Month. And I really, when I heard you just kind of randomly say on the air, well, let me back up. I know Susan because she works with Mandy Connell, and anybody who's listened to me knows my connection to Mandy. And I listen to Mandy, just not on her show, but I listened to her. And I heard Susan say, well, I had a stroke earlier this year. And I was like, wait, what? What? So of course I immediately text you. I'm like, wait, did I just hear you say you had a stroke? We need to talk about that. And so that's what we're going to talk about. But before we even dive into that, just welcome everybody to Heart Month. I am passionate about talking about this topic. I've been talking about it for many years. I have a very good connection with the American Heart Association. I believe that if you do everything you can to keep your heart healthy, pretty much everything else is going to be pretty good. Sometimes that's not the case. The lifestyle choices we make are going to make a huge difference. So, Susan, before we really dive into your story on that, let's go ahead and do your intro. You give us your background, and then we'll lead up to relatively present day.
Okay, great. So I got to meet you through Mandy Connell when you were on the Mandy Connell show. And you and I connected really well. And you're a great connector. I feel like I'm a good connector. And we did make that connection just because we liked each other, but also we like to keep ourselves fit. And it's been a journey for both of us as I've listened to your podcast and others. And so we had that in common. We actually had a picture taken with us with our great guns.
Yes, we did.
My background is I'm a news anchor and reporter. I work currently with iHeartMedia because they own KOA Radio. I've been with the station for a very long time, since the mid-'80s when I started, then left, went to San Francisco, worked for KGO Radio, which is no longer in existence, then came back to Denver, working part-time, full-time, part-time, and came back to Denver with my husband and children and raised our kids here in Denver. My background is that I love to be able to educate, essentially. That's what I wanted to do when I went off to school. I said, so, what do you want to do with your life? And I thought, okay, you know what? Being a teacher would be a really good thing. So I went to college thinking that in the education department, thinking I'd get my education credentials and maybe eventually teaching in the collegiate level. I wandered into the college radio station like most people. Some people do, not most people. And I love music. And wanted to spin discs. And they said, okay, if you're going to do that, then you have to join the staff. And this was in Durango, Colorado. KDUR is the radio station, and it's still in existence. And I said, okay, great. What kind of staffs do you have? And they said, well, and they listed them off. And I said, oh, I'll be on the news staff, because even at that age, and in my teens, I lived overseas. I lived in Israel for a year, and I would read all kinds of newspapers and magazines and from the United States, and they would talk about all different kinds of things. And I'm like, wait a minute, I was there, and that's not exactly what happened. And so I just, at that point, the wheels started turning in my head thinking, wait a minute, you need to always give the facts. I'm very factual. Some people say I'm a little too factual. I'm a little too linear, maybe. And I think it's always important just to give your people information and let people decide what they want to believe. But here's all the information. Here's the truth, at least what you can find, and keep digging. This is the truth. Anyway, so I joined the news staff. It was this woman and me. And then 2 weeks later, she quit. So I was the news director. Built up the staff to a lot of people. And a professor came into me and he said, so what are you doing here at this school? And I said, well, I'm going to be a teacher. He said, no, you need to be on the radio. I said, really? You can make money doing that? You can support yourself? He goes, aren't you making money now? And it wasn't at the college station. I had just kept doing things because I had to put myself through school. And so I got a job at the local radio station and I was doing those kinds of things. And I said, well, yeah. He says, you can do this. This is what you need to do. So I really actually feel like my job is to teach, to give information, not to persuade anybody to think one way or the other. That's not my job. I'm not an editorialist. You're not reading the back of the newspaper section like where you got when newspapers were in existence and they had the opinion page or the editorials. That's not me. I'm not a talk show host. I don't say how you should believe or give one side. I try to give a very balanced, a very, here is, if I have one side of an issue on, I will dig for the rest to get the other side. If I can't get the other side, I will say, here's the one side. Sorry, we reached out to the other side, but they're not talking. So that's me. And that's my professional journey. Personally, I'm married and I've got a couple of kids and I love hiking and snowshoeing in the winter. And I love do I love fitness? No. Do I know that it's good for me? Yes. So I have to love it. I try to embrace it. And here we are talking about your heart and all these different things. And that's probably why you were like, wait, what? She had a stroke? Yeah. And I also happen to know a little about a lot of things. And that's how I knew I was having a stroke.
Yes. And all of that, all of those reasons you just mentioned are exactly why I think you are the perfect messenger for this particular conversation. If you look at you and you know your background, your history with your habits and your health, you are a woman who takes care of herself. And yet you are a woman who had a stroke. By all outward appearances, you would never think, oh, I bet she's going to have a stroke. And because you look for facts and you deliver facts, that really is what we're here to talk about today is here's the deal. And here's what you can do. Here's what you control. Here's what you don't control. Here's what a potential outcome is. Here's how to know what you might be experiencing. And I think yours is such a powerful voice because very often we have this preconceived idea of what a person who will have a stroke or heart attack looks like.
Yeah.
And we have to bust through that because so many of the stories are, oh, you would never have expected this person. So let's go ahead and just a very brief background on your own journey with health and your health habits. Have you always lived a healthy lifestyle? Is that something that you adopted at a particular point in your life? And what exactly does that look like?
So that's interesting. I grew up mostly in the 60s. Mom, I'm one of 4 kids. I'm the oldest. I always thought Little Debbie's were in every single household. Okay.
And Debbie Nutty Bars.
Okay.
One of my favorites.
So I did not know they came in other kinds except for the little Swiss cakes. All right. I thought that was a Little Debbie. When I actually was an adult in grocery shopping and got to that aisle, I went, wait, and I saw a rack of Little Debbies and all the different kinds that you can get. I went, really? I didn't know it was a brand. I just thought a Little Debbie. Okay. So and they was a staple. And I constantly ate those. I mean, they were always in our household. I remember Mom had Lucky Charms. She had to put a lock on the pantry so that we just didn't go in and just tip the box over, eat the little marshmallows and put the rest back in the box and put it back up. Okay. That's how bad it was. I am at a lifetime Weight Watchers. Hello, as a teenager, because I needed to. Okay. I told you at the beginning of this, I lived in the Middle East, in Israel for a year. And then after that, I traveled throughout Europe with a girlfriend of mine. Yes, on $200. Yes, very much for a couple of months, making our way and going to places. Anyway, came back so ginormous that I literally got off the plane, not seeing my folks for almost a year. Well, it was over a year because they did come over and visit. And my mom, first thing she goes, oh, good. We need another shelf around the house, talking about how big my butt had gotten. So, and the next day, I mean, literally, she woke me up and took me to Weight Watchers. So have I always eaten well? No. Have I had weight issues? Yes. So, and I'm not a tall person. So every pound, I mean, it just keeps kind of like on shorter people, more weight is a lot more weight. You can see it. So I've really had to work at being healthy and think about what I'm eating. I had a ski accident when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, and I was laid up for 6 months in a body cast. So that journey, I missed, the second semester of ninth grade. So that in and of itself, and how my leg grew back, set myself up for issues down the road with my skeletal system. And so everybody gets things and you deal with them. But I've always loved the outdoors. So I have never been a real athlete, but I'd like to do athletic things. Swimming, I was good at. Running, not so good because of my leg. So tennis, going after a little ball was like, really? No, that's not happening. But skiing was good because I, let gravity be your friend. Once you realize that, then you can do actually really well. So eating and taking care of yourself has been a learned thing for me. And everybody, whoever listens to the show with Mandy Connell, knows that I like cake. That's one of the things that I'm just.
Me too. These, Susan, are some of the things that really connect us. Your Lucky Charms story, I have told my Lucky Charms story over and over. Someday I'll tell it to you. Yeah. Cake, same. I mean, you and I, we are very, very kindred spirits.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and that's right. I mean, we really did connect. And so, and you connect over food. That's another thing. My family, everything was food based, to the point where you always knew Dad would say, okay, we're going to go to Glenwood Springs and we're going to eat at, and then he would list the restaurants. Okay. Everything was based around food. Where are you going to eat? My dad came to visit me in San Francisco when I had moved there, and it was always, everything was based around a meal. And some people can handle that fairly well. But is it the meal or is it the experience? I mean, you really have to start separating that if you have food issues, which I guess I do, in the sense that I'm talking about this now. So, and food is yummy and it's a connector, but is it the be all end all? It should nourish your body, and it can bring experiences. And when you walk into somebody's house, you go, wow, it smells like grandma's house, because they're cooking a great chicken soup or what have you, or latkes for Hanukkah, or, the wedding cake cookies or the wedding cookies, that in Christmas time you go to people's houses and have. So food is a connector, but food can also make it difficult for your body. And so it's a real mental thing that you have to, and I think about this, and I'm actually in a stage now where I'm having to think even more about it, because I've learned, and I always knew this, both of my grandmothers on both sides of my family, so my dad's mom and my mom's mom, were diabetic. Well, my mom's mom was this vibrant, real, she lived to 102, all right? She worked up to 100, 101. She walked all the time. She would exercise. She was just a very fit, sturdy person. My other grandmother, not so much. She died in her mid-70s. She smoked. She was also diabetic. But did she know? No, because smoking back then, for women, that was glamorous. So, and she wanted to be glamorous, and she was a world traveler, and she did things. So, and I talked to my sister, and so now we have to look out for diabetes on my side, for me and my sister. And if you looked at me, you'd go, there's no way. I'm like, genetics, sign me up. Guess what?
Right.
So it's a really tough thing that you have to go, okay, it's genetic, and it's also what you do for yourself. And you have to embrace that and go, all right, I'm going down this road. Thank God. And I do thank God every day for my gifts to be able to move and to do things, because I know if you don't move, you don't move. And my ability to do that, and I was listening to the podcast with Mandy Connell that you had done, and talked about how it's a gift to be able to move. It's a gift that we have to be able to exercise, because there are some people who would give anything to be able to do that, whether it be an accident or born that they are not able to.
Absolutely. Yeah. I fully believe movement is medicine, and something I'm passionate about getting people to embrace, not as something that you have to do, but something that you get to do. And let's talk about just heart health in general, because
Yeah.
this is Heart Month, I want to really dive into that. Genetics plays a role in everything. I have said this over and over and over, and I will continue to say it because it's a fact. And yet, your lifestyle choices play as much and maybe even a bigger role in whether or not those genetics are going to cause an issue, or if there is an issue, allow you to come out of the issue okay. So the genetic component, right? This goes right into when we talk about heart health and even diabetes, all of that. Know your numbers. You have to know your numbers. Anybody listening to this, if you have not gone and gotten your full workup done, blood sugar, blood pressure, full cholesterol panel, I would probably even throw in thyroid panel, maybe hormone panel, some of those other ones, but at least, the very least, the basics. You have to do that, because that is how you peek under the hood. That is how you get not all the answers, but at least a starting point of what direction my health is going. What is the trajectory? And some of these red flags can be taken care of very, very easily. Some of them might require a little more deep digging and maybe a little more work. So, Susan, at what point did, your active role in your health, being proactive about knowing your numbers, understanding your family history, at what point did that really become just like a non-negotiable for you?
So, first of all, knowing your numbers and having a baseline. So even if you've never had an issue, when you say know your numbers, you're giving yourself a baseline. You're giving yourself a starting point. And then you can figure out where are you going from up and down. And that's kind of like with your weight, right? You have to have a baseline. Where do I want to be? How do I feel and fitting into things? All right. So first of all, I've always, once a year, you have your, physical, your workup, that sort of thing. And I've always had low cholesterol, good blood pressure, never really any issues with my blood sugar levels. Everything has been really great, steady Eddie, if you will. That said, it was really what happened to me. By the way, as a woman, women suffer strokes and heart attacks and die from them much more so than men, because we tend to ignore things. Oh, it's just a little pain. Not a big deal. And that's not okay. We have to take care of ourselves, because we are the caretakers, because we do know how to do those things. Don't ignore it. So there's an acronym called FAST, F-A-S-T. And those are the things about with a stroke. And I guess it's because you have to, and I have to think, why would they call it fast? Well, maybe because you have to act fast, and you really do. Because when you have a stroke, every second counts. Really, truly, to be able to get a clot buster, to be able to know, to be able to reverse ill effects if you are suffering from them. So FACS, it stands for face, F, face, to see the person you're talking to, if their face droops, or if they're lopsided or something like that with your face. Arms, can you raise your both arms? Does one arm drop down? That sort of thing. So that's the A in FAST. Speech, say a short phrase, or are you slurring? Do you have strange speech coming out of your mouth? That's the S. And T, time. So FAST, F-A-S-T, time, because if the answer to any of these questions or things, you need to call 911 right away to be able to act, because every second counts. So because I do, as I said, know a little about a lot of things, I knew those kinds of things, and I was talking on the phone, and I'll just dive right into what happened to me. And it will be actually 2 years this April. So it happened in 2021. And I was talking on the phone with a friend of mine. I was dressed in my exercise clothes. I was going to go work out. And we were kibitzing just before I was heading to exercise. And in my ear, I heard her sound like a Martian. And I thought, oh, I think I'm having a stroke. And I tried to say to her, Wendy, I think I'm having a stroke. But I couldn't. It came out garbled. And then I knew, because I looked down, and my left arm had drooped, had died. I screamed, and I had the phone in my right hand. I don't know why I didn't have her on speaker, but I didn't. I had the right phone in my right hand. And I screamed. Our daughter happened to be home for the week visiting. I hung up the phone, and our daughter came racing around and saw me. I had put myself on the ground thinking, well, I don't, and in my head, I'm like, well, I don't want to fall down. If I'm having a stroke, I don't want to fall down and hurt myself anymore. I thought, okay, so put yourself on the ground, Susan. And I did. And she's like, what's wrong? I said, and I got my speech back, but my arm was still dead. And I said, and I could have got my hearing back. By the way, hearing, when it affects your hearing, is hearing aphasia, speech, it's speech aphasia. And so I got my hearing and my speech back, but my arm was still dead. And I said, I'm having a stroke. And she said, all right, I'll call 911. And she called 911. By the time the firefighters, because they came first, by the time they got there, I was sitting up and I was able to speak and I got my arm back and it was all great. And then the ambulance came and they thought I was having a TIA, which is what they call a mini stroke. It's because it affects your brain and then it goes away quickly. I was like, no, wasn't a TIA. But they were all saying, oh, yeah, it was a TIA. Because what happens with TIAs is that really it happens so quickly. You don't even sometimes know you have it. You can have TIAs in your sleep. Strokes can hit people in their sleep. But I thought, they got me to the hospital. They did a whole workup. Yes, indeed, I had a full ischemic stroke. And then you can see that on the brain. It's kind of a cool thing, actually. If you can recover from it, you can go, oh, wow, scientifically, that's kind of neat. Because you can actually see the part. When I went to my neurologist, he goes, that's where it's at. It's right there in your brain. And he goes, yep, that's your left arm. That's your speech and hearing center for that. It was really actually kind of interesting to see. So I was very blessed. Everything came back. My speech was a little affected still. I was told to do speech therapy because I do speak for a living. I was able to work on that myself. I know how to do certain tongue exercises and different things. I worked with a really great guy at the time. He was the producer and the board op for Mandy Connell's show. And Grant's just amazing. And he could hear it. He knew. And I had said, all right, you have to work with me on this. If you hear something, you've got to tell me so that I can work with it a little bit better and work on my speech. And I did, and I got it all sorted out myself. Now, I was going to say, I'd never been on a cholesterol drug in my life. They put me on a cholesterol drug. I'm like, I don't even have high cholesterol, really? But they go, we have to do everything. They don't know why I had a stroke. A third of all people who have strokes never find out why. It wasn't atrial fibrillation. It wasn't any of that. Don't know why.
I want to highlight a couple of things that you said to make sure that people heard them. Number one is know the signs. And, as women, we do dismiss things, we ignore things, we brush it off as something else, or maybe I just didn't even know that was a sign. So the reason why it is one-sided is because a stroke occurs when there is a clot that prevents blood flow to the brain. Your brain operates in hemispheres. Wherever that clot prevented blood flow, whatever part of the brain did not get blood, whatever part of the brain or whatever body parts that part of the brain works on, that's what's going to be affected. So the one-sided stuff is really critical to be aware that this could very well be a stroke. So number one, know the signs. Number two, pay attention and use your intuition. Number three, your daughter, amazing, call 911. That is the number one thing to do. Number one thing, call 911. Nobody likes to make that 3-digit phone call. I get it. I don't like to make it. I don't like it when it's made on me. And yet that could be the difference between life and death, between a great outcome and a not so great outcome, because the sooner you get care, the more likely you are going to have a decent outcome. If you are having your daughter drive you to the ER, you're not getting care. If you think, I'm fine, I'm sitting up, but I should probably go to the doctor, and you drive yourself, you are not getting care. You're also putting a lot of other people at risk. So please, as annoying and as expensive as that 3-digit phone call might be, it's probably the right call to make. And, number three, I am going to say, and this is just me, my opinion, I have zero medical background to base this on. I'm going to say you had a good outcome because of those things, but also because you were a healthy person going into it. You don't smoke, you exercise, you eat healthy more often than you don't, right? You do the basic pillars of how to take care of a human so that if and when some random thing shows up for who knows why, your human has the ability to come through it. Because people will say this to me all the time. Bob Harper, classic example, Mr. Biggest Loser trainer, right? Had a heart attack. Well, what's the point of living a healthy lifestyle? You have a heart attack anyway. Well, the point is he survived and he's pretty darn awesome, living a great life. That's the point.
Exactly. And see, so, and the things that you touched on, and remember the FAST: face, arms, speech, time. Time is of the essence. You really only have 3 hours. And that's why they even say, if you're with somebody else, note the time when the symptoms started so that the doctors in the hospital can work with that information. And yes, ambulance rides are very expensive. Okay. When they came and they said, okay, we want to take you. First of all, I said to my daughter, oh, when you're on the phone with 911, have them come with no sirens, please. I mean, and she's like, what? I'm like, and she's like, Mom, really? Let's just get them here. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're right. But then they came and I said, oh, she'll just take me to the hospital. Well, the ambulance drivers are saying no, because first of all, when you arrive to a hospital in an ambulance, guess who gets to be seen first as opposed to all those people sitting in the waiting room? Yeah, it's the person who got to go in the ambulance. So that is the time element as well. Don't mess around with this. Stroke, it really, I can tell you, I was in the emergency room. The doctors were in there. They were talking to me. I was able to speak to them. And they were talking to me, and I told them all about what happened with the stroke and the symptoms and everything. And then all of a sudden, I would sit there, and I was doing this. I was like, okay, so here's my hand. And then it would die again. I go, oh, there it is. It's dead. And then it would come back. And they're looking at me like, whoa. I mean, they literally saw it alive and dead. Alive and dead. I mean, so they saw what was happening too. And that happened over the next hour while I was in the emergency room, and then it came back again. So my body was fighting, and thank God it was. Perfect example, most recently, Damar Hamlin, the football player. Here this person is in this young 20, and thank God, I mean, he is doing so well. As of this podcast, he is doing great. But over a week ago, he was not. Okay. What happened is because he was so healthy, and who knows why else I mean, like you were saying, he was so healthy and is so healthy, he was able to recover so much more quickly. Okay, get off the ventilator and to move forward with his physical therapy and to do those kinds of things. So when you do start out in a much more fit scenario, you have a much better fighting chance to survive whatever is thrown at you. And I do credit that. Somebody said to me, when they found out I had the stroke, and they said, gosh, you eat so healthy, you exercise, you do all these things, I might as well just unhinge the refrigerator and tip it back and eat it all. And because that's like, well, why bother? But we know why. We have to take care of ourselves, and we have to be able to survive and to keep moving.
Yeah. And I think too, especially when I work with people like you, and there are a number of people, women, especially in my life, who have had heart attacks and strokes that you would never imagine. They feel embarrassed. Like, I'm the healthy person. I shouldn't be having this. I'm not going to tell anybody because then they'll judge me. They'll question it. They'll poo-poo. See, you wasted all your time not enjoying life by not doing this and doing that. You are the reason that we're talking about this because there is nothing to be ashamed of. Okay. There is no shame in something happening to you, whether your lifestyle helped you or not. There's no shame either way. The point is, here we are now. What are we going to do? Or here is where I am now. And I know that maybe the lifestyle choices I'm making are not putting me in a good position for if and when something occurs. And perhaps it's time to have a wake-up call and determine that I want to do the best I can to have a fighting chance. A lot of times we live in denial, right? That'll never happen to me. Well, that won't happen to me. I guarantee you never thought you'd have a stroke.
No, I never thought I'd have a stroke. I was never really obese. I was sometimes overweight, but obesity, high blood pressure, atrial fibrillation, uncontrolled diabetes. I'm listing things that if you have any of these, you've got to work on those. I don't. Okay. So smoking, excessive alcohol intake. I don't even drink alcohol anymore. I miss my tequila. I also suffer from migraines, carotid or coronary artery disease. I mean, really, it's and genetics. Who knows? I mean, none of that. So, but you still have to take care of yourself. Men have more strokes, but women have deadlier strokes.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's
And I'm
amazing.
going to have more guests. February is all about the heart. So Matters of the Heart,
Good.
every podcast episode is a guest with a heart related chatter. And what's shocking, and because I've worked with the Heart Association, I know a little bit about this, is there is so much awareness now, or the push for awareness about heart disease in women. And we put heart and stroke in the same thing because it's not the same. Obviously, one affects the brain, one affects the heart, but your arterial system
Right.
is operating everything. And a lot of times the things that increase your risk for a heart attack also increase your risk for a stroke. The things that will decrease your risk will decrease your risk. Genetics is genetics. Okay. You can't do anything about that.
And nobody in my family ever had one, except
Right.
my aunt, my mom, one of my mom's sisters. And she, again, because her husband, they were on their, and they're very fit. My mom comes from fit stock. Like I told you, my grandmother lived to 102. So they're all really fit, thin, athletic people. Not that they're great athletes again, but they like to move. And my auntie and my uncle were on their daily walk and in their late 70s, and they're chatting away. And then all of a sudden she starts sounding like a Martian. And my uncle stopped her, took one look at her, sat her on the ground and called 911, knowing that speech is one of those FAST, the S speech was one of those symptoms. Called 911, got her to the hospital. She had a stroke just like me. And I was like, whoa. And out of the blue. Then she was perfectly fine for 5 more years until her early 80s. And they're on their daily walk, kibitzing. All of a sudden, sounds like a Martian. Looks at her face was droopy, calls 911. Okay, so they finally figured out that actually she had a little tiny, teeny, tiny hole in her heart that she was born with 80 years ago, had it repaired, and she hasn't had a stroke since. Now, that's it. I don't have one. I was checked for that again. So that's the only genetic stroke situation that we have in my family. So again, I could be one of those 1/3 that they'll never know. But I still have to stay healthy, and I still have to do my best to fight through it.
Exactly. And that's why the awareness is critical, obviously. And we have this Go Red for Women. It's a big focus on women's heart health. And I'm very passionate. If you've followed me at all, I've spoken at some luncheons, they're a keynote speaker for the luncheons. It's something that I want everyone to have awareness of and to do things about. And as women, we're busy, we're paying attention to other people, not ourselves. And I'm specifically going to speak to the healthy people in my life. You think that will never happen to me because I'm healthy. I hope not. I hope it never happens to me. It could. I've been told I have a heart murmur. I've been questioned about my very low blood pressure. I've been told I have atrial fibrillation by some doctors, and the others are like, oh no, that's not correct. I do the best I can because that is all I can do. And if something happens, I know the signs, I know the symptoms. I know 911 is not a number I want to call, but I'm going to do it because I'd like to live. And if that is me, then I'm going to even be a bigger voice about getting people to pay attention. So to all my healthy friends out there who do all the right things, keep doing those right things, but be aware, and don't think, well, that can't be what this is because I'm healthy, right? Sometimes things just happen. If you are someone who is not embracing a healthy lifestyle, again, we could name probably 10 people that smoke, drink, eat crap, don't exercise, and don't have any heart conditions, will never have a stroke, nothing. You'll say, see, it doesn't matter. Yes, it does.
Yeah, and it depends on their age too. I mean, you have to think about this. And if
Right.
you're 20s, 30s, even maybe early 40s, and people are overweight, even by 10 pounds, carry around a 10-pound weight every single day and see what that does to your back or your joints or your neck or those kinds of things. Because the stress on your skeletal system puts so much stress on your organs too, because everything is affected. You know, your knee bone's connected to your, and then fill in the blanks, you know, your shin bone or your thigh bone or what have you. Everything is connected and everything works. Remember the game Operation we used to
Yes.
play, and the kid, you go and you little dig and it light up the light in case you touch the wrong organ. I mean, we're all so connected. And I think about the exhibit that came to museums they're around the world. It's called Body Worlds.
Yes.
And if you saw the fat that encompasses people's organs, and if you just think about the extra 10 pounds. Now, everybody's always, I mean, and they can't, if I could just lose 10 pounds. But those 10 pounds are important or 15 or 20, because if it is fat, if it's not muscle, that's different. We're talking about fat. We're not talking about muscle. And your heart, by the way, is a muscle that you have to keep in tune. It's the muscle. That's why we do cardio exercises, because it's a muscle. You're making it stronger. So anyway, if you've got extra layers of stuff squishing your organs, that's not okay. Your liver doesn't like that. Neither does neither do your kidneys or your lungs. So that's the issue. With carrying around extra weight, not just with your skeleton, but with your organs. And again, we're talking about, you know, the muscles of the heart, which I just mentioned, that jeepers creepers, you've got to keep your heart healthy. That's when you're talking about healthy heart, when you're doing the cardio exercise. Why am I doing this? Well, so that you can pump well, so that your heart as a muscle works.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for that statement, because I think too often we put the focus on weight loss or exercise or nutrition for a number on the scale or for a way that we look. And this is what I've been teaching and preaching about for decades now. It is about your health. It really is. Of course, many of us want to look a certain way. Great. Let's strive for that. But maybe if you shift that focus to your health, right? How strong is your heart? How big and flexible are your arteries? I'm going to do a whole heart health session here for the month of February for everybody to listen to. So stay tuned for that, because it is so important to understand how the habits that we engage in are impacting how our body functions. I like to call cardio exercise strength training for your heart, because that's what it is. You have to challenge it. You have to use it. If you are sedentary, you don't use your heart muscle, you lose your heart muscle. It doesn't have the capability to pump big and strong. So absolutely, cardio exercise, not only to strengthen the heart, but it is flexibility training for your arteries. And we want a nice, big, flexible transportation system. Nutrition plays a huge role, which, I'll be talking about that later on as well. But I think just, the main message I want people to get from this one is this can happen to anyone. You can only do what you can do. You are in charge of your choices. And hopefully we are inspiring you to make the best choices you can every day when it comes to what you put in your body, how you move your body, how you manage your stress, anger, and anxiety, how much sleep you're getting, what your mindset is, your attitude, right? I mean, Susan, you've had such a positive attitude and approach to all of these really hard things. And that plays a huge role in all of this as well. Knowing the signs and symptoms, the awareness, acting quickly if you think or you or someone else in your life is experiencing, whether it's a stroke or a heart attack. I'll be talking about heart attack on another episode. And then, just continuing to do the best you can to make the best choices and to be an advocate for the healthy lifestyle. Susan, before we officially wrap up, is there anything that you want people to know that we did not touch on today?
It's okay to say, oh, I feel you can have a poor me moment, but you only get a moment. That's it. You have to advocate for yourself. I think that's a really big thing. I think it's really important to speak up for yourself. and on a variety of levels, from, your heart health, from strokes, from any other kinds of issues. We as women, we have, and men too, but, women have to really speak up and say, hey, this is what's happening. This is what's going on in my head. This is how I'm feeling right now. And listen to your body and take care of your body. You only get one. So, take care of what's keeping you moving in your life. I mean, I'm sure when we say goodbye, I'll go, oh, I should have said this, but
That's okay.
But it's some of those things that I'm passionate about. Learn as much as you can, get as much information as you can handle, and seek out people who can support you. And I think that that's really the best thing.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It really is a powerful message. Anybody listening, I know I have listeners from all decades. If you think, oh, I'm so young, this doesn't affect me, it does. And I'm willing to bet you have a parent or a grandparent. So maybe you encourage them to make different choices. Maybe you start to gain awareness. You teach them, you get them to listen to this podcast and teach them about the signs and symptoms. Get them to be active players in their own health. Anything that you can do to promote the healthy lifestyle, we are here to cheer you on. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you got something that you're going to take away from this. Take it seriously. Like Susan said, we get one shot. You have one body. Let's do what we can to give it the fighting chance if and when something should show up. And, we'll all go on to be the healthiest, happiest humans that we can be. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Now you get to go and be a better being.
Thank you for listening to the Be a Better Being podcast. Michelle and Sasha hope that what you heard today inspires you to embrace this journey of life with an open mind, a kind heart, and a willingness to learn and evolve. If you enjoyed the content, please help spread their message by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. If you have a show topic idea or would like to be a guest, please visit betterbeings.net and fill out a contact form. Until next time, go and be a better being.